Thank you for attending my talk on curriculum theory and the college and university teacher in Japan. My name is Camilo Mania Villanueva. I'm a student in the MADA program. I study literature, especially works that are outside the canon. For example, Abe Kobo and Nakagami Kenji. I also study how to teach literature in the second language classroom. Today, though, I want to talk about curriculum. It's another one of my interests that began earlier this year. I'm a lecturer at Nagoya Women's University. So before I get into curriculum ideology, I want to first talk about what ideology is. I want to define it within the context of our own culture. And then I want to give you a chance to do an inventory assessment on your own curriculum preferences. This will be useful before beginning a talk about curriculum ideology. This should help us lead into that, as explained, curriculum ideology is explained by Shiro. I want to discuss the results of your assessment and also the 4 ideologies. I want to find out if you are like me, if you are a chameleon teacher. I then want to go back to anthropology and discuss why ideologies change, and then look at how curriculum has changed in the last 130 years in my country. That will help us look forward to the future. But first, what is ideology? Please think about that. This is a useful definition, sort of, from an open source textbook published by the American Anthropological Association. A way of thinking that attempts to justify inequalities in power and status. I think ideology is just what we believe. It's our faith, or even the lack of it. It can be our philosophy on life. For many, it is a religion. This is an interesting definition as an opiate for the masses, and a more recent translation of Marx's famous quote. But talking about religion can open a can of worms. So I want to turn our attention to more concrete definition of ideology as what we believe. Therefore, I want to put it into context of everything else in life and the world. So I turn to anthropology. It's what I studied as an undergraduate. I studied biological anthropology, or specifically human evolution. Did you know that anthropology has 4 subfields? Of course, everyone knows archaeology, but did you know that linguistics is also a subfield? Linguistic anthropology should not be confused with anthropological linguistics, which is a subfield of linguistics. There's biological, which I studied. And today we're going to talk about cultural anthropology. Leslie White was a famous cultural anthropologist. He was well known for his theories of cultural evolution. I've modified White's very complex theories in using a layer cake model of culture change, culture evolution, from Brown. By the way, Leslie White got his PhD from the University of Chicago, and this was a short time before Kurt Vonnegut was a graduate student there. Vonnegut never received his master's. Well, he did receive it much later for, I believe it was Cat's Cradle. But I believe that many of Vonnegut's beliefs on religion can be traced to the University of Chicago, to many of Leslie White's theories. Anyway, White's model of culture is very useful in viewing how ideology affects our lives. So on the right, we see a group of people, and this group of people could be a hunter-gatherer group. It could be a tribe. It could even be your circle of friends. And it may even be a whole nation. And we see that our beliefs are at the top of the cake. And we want to look at the cake from the top down. At the top of the cake, we see ideology, our beliefs. And then the next layer, we see social organization. So our beliefs affect how we interact with other people. And then part of social organization would also be our culture, the nuts and bolts of life, of society. And then technology, the things that we use to get resources from the environment. So this is how we see the world. that, we view our lives based on our beliefs. And many of you, you might not argue with that. We use technologies, for example, God gave me a good brain. I'm good at writing, so I use a computer. I use a pen. At the base of the cake is the environment. Many of us don't care about the environment, but we do know that technologies affect the environment. For example, if you've been to Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Okinawa, we know the power of science and technology. And this is another example. I believe in God, which is my ideology. My God says, yada, yada. So I do something, which is social organization, how I interact with people. I use some form of technology to do blah, blah, blah. And that technology affects the environment, but who cares about the environment? So this is called a top-down belief system. And this is how we see the world as our ideology affecting our social organization, affecting our technology and the environment. I want to come back to this later because this view is wrong. On to curriculum ideology. I adapted a quiz from Shiro. This is copyrighted. So there are about 24 questions. It's in 6 parts. And it's an inventory on your curriculum. So before talking about curriculum ideology, it's good to know where you stand with curriculum on 6 parts. So Shiro's 2013 book was called Curriculum Theory. And like I said, I've simplified the questions. I am providing you with the questions on another sheet. And all you would need right now is a pencil and a notebook to write down your answers. And you're going to read 4 statements from each part. And for each statement, you're going to write how strongly you believe in that. So 1 would be the strongest, so you agree with the most. The second statement, you would put 2 that you believe in the most, and so on for 3. And the statement that you agree on the least, you agree with the least, you'd put a 4. So this would be clear here. Let me show you. So this is an example from my notebook, and these are my answers. Your numbers will be different, but we have, if you could write on the left side of the page, 1 to 6 in Roman numerals, and then at the top of the page, A, B, C, D. These will be the statements that you'll see soon. And then you're going to write 1, 2, 3, or 4 for each statement based on how strong you believe in it. And again, 1 is you believe in the most. So let's get started. Number 1, schools should empower students to change society, train students to have skills that will help them be good citizens, teach students the accumulated knowledge of a culture, stimulate children to learn by being child-centered. So in your notebook, as you can see, again, my notebook example, I thought the first statement was the strongest. So that's A is 1. And C, I agreed with the least. So you see C is 4. I hope that's clear. So let's go back to the statements. I'll give you a short time to decide. Okay, let's move on to part 2. Teachers should be facilitators of learning in order to be more efficient educators. They should consider the student's environment in order to stimulate them to learn. They should expose students to meaningful experiences from which they can learn. Teachers should be knowledge experts. So please, again, part 2, write for A, B, C, D, your agreement. Okay, so part 3, learning best takes place with stimulating text and positive feedback strategies. Learning best happens when teachers teach the knowledge that students need to know. Learning best happens when students are motivated by their own experiences. And learning takes place by engaging students in social issues that encourage them to find answers for. So these are all may be good things for learning, but you must put them in the order that you agree with the most. Okay, I'm going to go on to part 4, talking about knowledge. Not the best knowledge is what has been considered valuable to culture over time. The best knowledge comes from personal experience. The best knowledge are the skills learned to be more constructive. The best knowledge is a commitment to ideals about society and how to forge a more perfect world. So which statement best reflects your beliefs on knowledge? Childhood is about learning what it means to be a better person and to fit into society. It's a time of great learning in order to develop the intellect and memory required to absorb as much knowledge as possible. Childhood is when children develop at their own pace and at a time of exploration and having fun. It's about learning how to make the world a better place for everyone. So what are your beliefs about childhood? Okay, the last is evaluation and assessment. Evaluation is about determining competence to perform tasks. Evaluation facilitates children's growth and should not be concerned with standards. Evaluation should help students achieve their potential. Evaluation should be objective regarding how much students have learned. So please fill in your numbers for that. And as you can see, again, in my example, for part 6, I thought the first statement was truest and the third was least. So I hope you have 6 sets of numbers. We're going to come back to this later and talk about what they mean. And if you couldn't do this, please rewind the video and yeah, you can pause. Okay, let's move on to curriculum. So I want you to think about curriculum, and I want you to think about it as a completion activity. So complete the sentence. Curriculum is. Can you say it in one word? This may be impossible. The last 24 statements that we went through were all about curriculum, different types of ideologies on curriculum. And these are some other ideas from Ornstein Hunkins. Curriculum as a field of study is elusive and fragmentary, and what it is supposed to entail is open to a good deal of debate and even misunderstanding. So from that, I would say that it's indefinable and controversial. Here's another statement. This is from 1988, by the way. This is from 2007. The term, a little more recent, the term curriculum and its many synonyms is used in numerous situations by people who believe they know its meaning. I say it's ubiquitous. It goes on. When the term is applied to what is done in schools, however, numerous difficulties may arise. On the one hand, everybody seems to know what schools should teach. I'd say that means it's inclusive. But on the other hand, there's almost never complete agreement on what the curriculum of the school should be. And that sounds familiar. So I would say that sounds contentious. So let's add these 3 words to the ones we got earlier. It's difficult to define curriculum. It was only after teaching for 17 years in Japan that I finally understood what curriculum was for me. Curriculum in all its complexities is a mess because it's what teachers believe, and there's many teachers and we all have different personalities. We all have different experiences, and we're all at different points in our teaching careers. So being able to say with certainty what curriculum is will be a mess. But in my opinion, it's a fine mess. My scholarly interest in curriculum started earlier this year, as I mentioned, when I read Shiro's book. When learning about the ideologies, at the time, I was very, I thought I was more of like a scholar academic or learner-centered. When I looked at my self-assessment, I realized I was more attuned to a different type of ideology, which is social reconstruction. It's complicated, and I'll show you why. This is Shiro's book, by the way, and these are some of the other books. This is one from Japan, which is missing a lot of the theories that Shiro's has. And there's some various curriculum books, as you can see why it's so complicated. But first, this is my take on the 4 ideologies. And I want you to think about which one you have most identified with as a teacher. Then we'll look at your assessment and see if it matches. So I mentioned that I was more of a scholarly academic type. And scholarly academic is knowledge is power. When I was in, I think it was the 10th grade, my biology teacher told me, you know, knowledge is the one thing that cannot be taken away from you. And I never forgot that. So for me, learning was about gaining as much knowledge as I could, and that would raise my station in life. However, at this time in my life, I realized that that's not necessarily true. Scholar academic should also be objective. Knowledge should be objective, but it's controlled by knowledge experts. And school is about filling little heads with information in order to continue the academic tradition. Learner-centered is education, and these are my words. Education is nothing without considering the learner. Grades are basically worthless because everyone is at their own development timetable. Children are our national treasures. Social efficiency. Institutions are places that should be made more efficient for learning, geared toward success, full of learning ladders, so to speak. This is a term that I got from Teacher Ready program. It is a teacher's job to be effective and maximize student learning. And finally, social reconstruction. Every teacher that walks into the classroom is political. You can't deny it. We are either promoting our beliefs for social reform or supporting the status quo by remaining quiet. It is necessary to teach students to make society a better place. So which of these 4 ideologies, as I've defined them, as I understand them, do you think you would agree with the most? So please think about that. Now we're going to look at your results. So I created an Excel spreadsheet that I shared with you. You can put in your curriculum data and it will spit out your curriculum ideology tendencies based on the statements you ranked. So if you have time, please do that now. I'm not going to spend time discussing all the details of the spreadsheet, but it will produce a graph, and I will show you mine. The graph with the lowest standard deviation, and this is not scientific, but the one that has the least curves will be the most stable ideology, curriculum ideology, and those are the ones that you feel most confident about, according to Shiro. You combine that curve or the lack of curve with the ideology that has the lowest average. The lowest average means you identify with it the most. That's a good indicator of which ideology you favor now in your teaching career. So I have given you some, you can see it's small print now, but on the worksheet, on the example sheet of the spreadsheet, there's an explanation. So if you put your data on the worksheet tab, it should populate as seen here, and you can see my curve. So what was interesting for me is that I identified most with the social reconstruction was the lowest, one of the lowest averages, but social efficiency was what I identified with most. So it was a different ideology than scholarly academic or even learner-centered. Living in Japan so long, teaching young learners especially, being a learner-centered teacher, teacher is very important. It's very important. But it didn't reflect my true beliefs and ideology when I took this test at this time. So I'm curious about what your results indicate. So now we're going to go into talking about what does it mean to be a chameleon. So this graph comes from Shiro's book. Shiro recorded his own ideology preferences throughout his teaching career. So we could note how they changed depending on his role in education. This is what it means to be a chameleon. When we truly reflect on our teaching career, we can never really identify with just one ideology. There are ebbs and flows, and the borders are also fluid, I think. They overlap. So you can see 1965 to 1990, how Shiro's beliefs changed. And, why did these change? So it can be because of experience. It can be from our childhood, from mentors that we've met that have helped us, the knowledge that we've accumulated, the studies that we've conducted. And the key for the college educator is to know that our ideologies are not even our own. In many cases, they come from somewhere else. And in many cases, they're not even under our own control. They're shaped by the institutions we work at. They're shaped by society. And we're at the mercy of time. Just look at this graph. So that brings us back to the layer cake and how ideologies change. So as I mentioned earlier, how most people see our belief system as controlling everything, whereas, and I said that was wrong, whether we believe in a God or not, the anthropologist sees things in reverse. So the anthropologist sees cultural evolution, not from the top down, but from the bottom up. He sees how the environment changes everything. Just look at what COVID has done. It has pushed us inside our homes. Even as we attend this conference, as you watch this video, you're protected by technology from getting infected. So we use technology not just as a tool to facilitate things, but also for protection, as you know. And technology comes from the environment. Actually, everything that we're using right now to communicate, for you to listen to this, comes from the earth. We're using the environment, and this shapes how we interact, the technology we use. So instead of face-to-face, we're interacting on computers. Instead of shaking hands, we wave more, perhaps. We type into the chat. We turn off our videos and we ignore the new faces that we see. Whereas in real life, you can't really do that. If you see a new face, you can't really just ignore them. I guess you could. So anthropologists say that the top layer of the cake is always the last to change. So the way we interact will eventually change what we believe. So it is, and the ideology is the one that holds out until the end. So our beliefs are always the last to change. So maybe in our own life, even though society changes and how we interact with the world changes, our beliefs may stay the same until we die. I know that our beliefs about God can change, but maybe not as a society, maybe not even for 1,000 years. Maybe there'll be some discoveries in science that will help facilitate the change. But in a way, I believe that science has kind of replaced religion as an ideology. So that's what anthropology has to say about it. And you can see there. Also, you can see how curriculum ideologies have changed in the United States over the past 130 years. We like to think that what we're doing now is something new, but this is based on Shiro's research of the ideologies, the type of activity that was done with these types of teaching curriculum ideologies. In fact, we're just recycling many of the same beliefs, ideas that we've held throughout time. So when it comes to curriculum, our beliefs can also change, but it takes time. As teachers, we are subject to many types of social interactions, and that is perhaps why we are chameleons. I wonder what all this online teaching and learning will do to us. It definitely changes how we approach teaching. Will it change what we believe? I believe so. And when it happens, we must know the cause. There's never one right way. There is just the right way to do what's right now. Thank you very much.